Okay.
And we are up. All right, it's running now. Yay. Welcome everybody to Gen X Journeys. I'm Paul Stressner. And along with me is my Gen X book club co-host, Suzanne Matabodi.
Hello.
Welcome, Suzanne. Um, yep, this is gonna be a great episode. Before we jump in, I just want to say in 2006, I got my first iPod, and then maybe like a few months later, I discovered this thing on there called podcasts. But then I had no idea what that was, so I like clicked on it, and I found out it was like radio shows, and Star Wars is one of my passions, so I just typed in Star Wars for the search engine and it came up with Force Cast, which is now Rebel Force Radio, which I still listen to. It's like, oh, this is more stuff than just technology. And my biggest passion is the 80s. So there can't be anything about the 80s on here, but let me check. And then Stuck in the 80s popped up. So I checked that out and I just loved it. And it was awesome. And it is actually still on today, and I'm still listening. And so I'm very excited because it's a little bit surreal. Finally seeing somebody that I've been listening to for like almost 20 years now. And Steve Spears is the creator and co-host of Stuck in the 80s. And this year is actually celebrating 20 years, and it's the longest running 80s podcast in the world. And he's also the author of a brand new book, Stuck in the 80s 20 Years of Conversations with Pop Culture Icons Who Defined the Decade. And if that wasn't enough, he's also serves as a trivia MC for the annual Voyagers of the 80s cruise, which will be starting up next week. As if you listened to last week's episode, we had Claire and Caroline talking about their past shenanigans and their future shenanigans on the cruise. So I'd like to welcome Steve Spears. Welcome to Gen X Journey.
Wow. Thanks, Paul. I always love a good origin story. It's nice to find out how you discovered the podcast.
Yeah, way back in the early days. And when I first started listening, Sean Daly was already our co-host. But yeah, then of course like I went back and listened to the past episodes, and I know you had started with Gina, and then Sean Daly came on, and yeah, it's been a wild ride. And yeah, and you've had some incredible guests on there, and yeah, this has been quite an adventure for you. Uh, when you first started, what did what did it feel like podcasting? Did you see a future in it? Like, did you think that podcasts were going to take off, or how did you get started with this?
No, nobody I think could have foreseen where things were going to go. I was assigned to create a podcast at my job. I was working for the daily newspaper in Tampa Bay, the St. Petersburg Times, which was the largest paper in Florida at the time. And podcasts were just a thing that we'd heard about. And so my boss had said, someone here has to take on an assignment. I want you to create a podcast so we can find out how to do it.
Guinea pig.
So
Best way to figure it out.
some people everybody pitched an idea. I pitched two ideas. I pitched high school football refereeing because I was a high school football referee at the time. And she's like, I'm not feeling that one. And I was like, what about, the music and movies of the 80s? And she's like, there's the correct answer. So the plan was to maybe do 5 or 10 shows just so we could figure out how to do it, how to edit, how to record audio, how to edit it. And but we just kept going. We started getting emails from across the country, and created a blog to go with it and a Facebook page to go with it. And people were responding, and we were getting messages from around the world. And it just sort of started to blow our mind. And so the command from up above was keep going, see where it takes you. So that was 20 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, time flies. So you recorded it like right? Was there a studio? How would
It's
that look
funny.
like?
Yeah. I just came across some photos of the early days. The other when I was trying to find photos for the book, I was asking friends, do you have any photos from those early days? And there's a photo of me and Gina sitting at like a cafeteria table with little handheld mics in our hands, no headphones, just no, we might have a page of notes in front of us. And that was us for the first 10 or 20 episodes. We didn't know what we were doing. We had an intern at the time, a fellow named Brendan Watson, who had done a podcast before at his university. And so he kind of knew how to do it. And so he was our producer for those first shows. And so we would just sit there and we would have a topic and we would talk and he would tape it. And he was like, I'll take it from here. And that's how they got done. It was the wild, wild west. It was the frontier.
Yeah. That had some advantages. Like I said, like yours was like the only one that had popped up, and yeah, it happened to be really good. So yeah,
we benefited from the fact that we were the probably the first 80s podcast. I mean, there weren't a whole lot to begin with, so I can't imagine anybody predates us.
Yeah,
but the fact that we were so niche, everybody else was doing like really general podcasting, and we didn't have an interest in doing so. Being general, we just wanted to talk about our favorite stories from the 80s and just shoot the breeze for 20 or 30 minutes once a week. And that's how it started. We didn't plan, we didn't have any grand plan for things to go beyond 4 months. I remember at one point my boss came to me and said, congratulations, when we hit 25 episodes. We thought that's just, oh my gosh, we're Hall of Fame legends. We've done 25 podcasts. And she's like, congratulations, 25 podcasts. I'm like, oh, thanks. I said, but if I'm still doing this in 3 years, please come and kill me. So I don't know. I don't know why I Mopey Steve has to be Mopey, I guess. But no, it's just every year that we keep doing it, it's just 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I thought 15 years would be pretty ambitious, but to hit 20 is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, if you think about it, yeah, like 20 years goes 2006, but 20 years before that, we were in the 80s. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I think in terms of, I was in my 30s when I started this. I was in my I wouldn't get to be in my 30s again.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's kind of interesting that the podcast is gone on that much longer than the decade itself, actually. And I remember hearing that, way back when I was kind of introduced to you and your podcast. So it's an impressive claim, it's gone on twice as long as the actual 80s. So
yeah, I mean, it's 21 years old. It'll be 21 years old this year, and so it'll be old enough to drink. So that'll be nice.
Yeah, and I do know that there were, after that I did find a bunch of other 80s podcasts, but they didn't last or anything. So yeah, what kept you going? What kept you from quitting? You just like the environment, like meeting people. What kept you going?
I was never a full-time writer. I was an entertainment editor, and so podcasting was really my only creative outlet at the time, and blogging, because we created a blog that went with the podcast at that time, and I would blog 6 times a day, every day for 10 years straight.
Oh wow!
And part of that was just to prove to the other people at the newspaper, because newspapers 20 years ago were very print centric. The idea of websites obviously were around, but they weren't the go-to format. And so I started doing the Stuck in 80s blog every day for 10 years. I mean, without fail, and usually up to six entries a day, just to prove that if I can write about a decade that's been gone for 20 years, you guys can certainly write about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers once a day, or you can write about Florida politics once a day. If I can write 10 items today on John Cusack and Better Off Dead, or Debbie Foreman and Valley Girl, if I can do that, this often, then surely you can match even the smallest pace. And so part of the reason why I did it for so many years was not to show off, but just to show the potential of digital journalism. I really believed in digital journalism the moment it became a thing, and it's been my specialty ever since. The podcast and the blog together were like sort of my statement that there's other ways to reach an audience, and there's other ways to engage an audience. And so that was a big part of the attraction. The other part of the attraction was, and I don't remember the date, but we decided we'd start trying to do live, which we decided we'd start to do interviews. And so we would see who would be willing to come on our show. And then again, part of it was a matter of how do we do this? We need to learn how to do an interview for a podcast because someone much more important than us is going to do this after us, and they're going to need to know how. And so once we started getting 80s heroes of ours on the phone to talk to us, that's the addiction level. When you realize you can talk to Kenny Loggins and he's going to sing to you for a second, or Brian Johnson's going to tell you how it was that he wrote Hell's Bells, or Debbie Foreman's going to counsel you through one of your breakups. When those things start happening to you, you don't quit podcasting, you double down. Yeah. And I think even though probably the vast majority of our shows are not interviews, it's the interviews that are, to me, the most memorable moments, especially when you make a connection, like we've done dozens of times. And even sometimes when you talk to one of your heroes and you don't make a connection and you have that horrible feeling of regret that you just, you didn't do a good job today. You didn't bring your A game to interview Colin Hay today. And that was your chance and you blew it. And what are you going to learn from that? So it's a combination of feelings that go into the history of Stuck in the 80s.
That was kind of what I was wondering, was how do you kind of scrunch up the courage to get on the phone with those people? How do you not be starstruck? How do you
it's what I mean,
composure? I don't know.
do you remember there was once an SNL skit where Chris Farley and Paul McCartney, and it's him interviewing Paul, and he's doing a really, really bad job. Seeing that skit scares the crap out of you, and you realize you don't ever want to be that person. And I know it's meant to be funny, but at the same time, it's the sort of thing that keeps you awake at night. Is just take the time and really prepare for these interviews. And so, for the most part, every interview that we've done, it requires a couple of weeks of prep time to go and to read their previous interviews and to go watch YouTube clips, and if they've written a book, if you have time to read that, that's a bonus. It's not always doable in the time frame, but just at the end of the day, try to ask them questions that you think they'll rise to the occasion on. Don't ask Wang Chung why they named their band Wang Chung. Do your own research. So when I did talk to Wang Chung, instead of asking that question, I asked, I know why you named your band Wang Chung. My question is, 40 years later, do you wish you'd called yourself something else? But no, it's some of them, I talk about it in the book. I mean, I would feel deathly ill sometimes before an interview. Even, I mean, all of the early interviews for the first couple of years, I would feel nauseous the night before. And just really, there was like the euphoria of bagging an interview, like someone agrees to be on your show, and it's this super emotional high that I'm going to talk to Huey Lewis. And then the night before, you're like, oh my God, these questions are awful. What am I going to do? He's going to make fun of me. I need to do better. I better at least know the name of his last album, even though it wasn't in the 80s. Did I read enough interviews? Did I do enough research? All the what ifs start to pile into your brain, and it would make me really sick. And but it always felt like from the moment they said hi and said my name, that it just felt like that kind of went away, and that it just became a conversation.
Yeah, you know what? That's so funny you say. Well, first of all, it's ironic that you brought up that Chris Farley thing because I actually just posted that yesterday. I saw it, so I shared it. That Paul McCartney thing. But yeah, I feel the same way. I've had some celebrities that I've interviewed, and I felt the same way. I'd be so nervous leading into it, but then as soon as you start talking, it's just like having a conversation, normal conversation. I don't know.
You know,
Do,
what's
do,
funny though, just the moment that you start to feel at ease and you're like, oh, I've got this down. I know what I'm doing. Then someone rolls around and throws you a curveball right at the top of an interview, and then you just feel all nauseous again. And it's just, oh, Cyndi Lauper, she we said something to her that she just that we just knew we started off wrong, and it just there's maybe 6 or 7 people that happened to where we felt pretty good going in, and then we started off with the wrong question and it just never recovered, and totally on us. I mean, totally on us. And it just when I went back and reread the transcripts 20 years later for some of these interviews, I just because listening to my own voice is a non-starter. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to read the transcript. And I just sat there with my head in my hands going, oh, why did we ask that stupid question? What were we thinking? Why did we think that was clever?
Yeah, I think she wanted to promote something specific that wasn't 80s related, if I remember right. But yeah.
She was promoting a blues album. and and,
Okay, yeah.
and that's usually the worst case scenario when you're talking to somebody and they're promoting something that has nothing to really do with their brand. And so when Molly Ringwald was on the show, she was in a touring Broadway production of Sweet Charity. And so she wanted to talk about Sweet Charity and Broadway and all that sort of stuff. And here I am, like, I have to ask you about John Hughes. And you could just feel her just going, and this is the days before Zoom, so I can't see her. This is just a phone call, but you could
Okay.
just feel her tense up and go, "Oh God, again."
But when you go on an 80s podcast, then you got to make a little bit of a compromise as far as
Yeah.
the emotion,
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, that's a little on them too, but yeah.
well, I mean, but not always, because in the early days of the podcast, it was hard for us to explain to people what it was, because very few people understood what a podcast was. They understood that we worked for the newspaper. So they understood that they were talking to a couple of guys who worked at the newspaper. And we would say, hey, we're recording this for a podcast, but we're also going to use it for a news story. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess I understand what you're saying. So, so a lot of times I wouldn't tell people the name of the podcast. I'd say these days I say it's an 80s podcast. I don't always say, hey, it's the Stuck in the 80s podcast, because they take that a little too literally and they think that I'm applying it to them. So I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not saying you're stuck in the 80s. I'm saying I'm stuck in the 80s.
Do you still get nervous, or are you more used to it when you have celebrities?
Depends on who it is. Sometimes I get a good feel after seeing YouTube videos of people, and I'll look, and they've done a lot of podcast interviews. Okay, so they know what a podcast is. They seem like a happy-go-lucky kind of person. Then if I see that, then I relax a little bit more. But it's still that real strong euphoria when you book someone, and then that real feeling of, oh, please don't screw up the day of it. And the bigger the name, obviously, the more chance that you're the higher you aim, the farther you fall. But for the most part, I've been really, really lucky. And like I said, the interviews that didn't go well, they at least became good stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole chapter in the book about misfires where we said something stupid, we asked a dumb question, or the interview was at 9 a.m, and you never want to interview a rock star at 9 a.m. And but we didn't ask it. It's when this is the time you arranged, and you don't want to be the first interview of the day. You want to be the last interview of the day sometimes. But no, I mean, even a bad interview makes for a great story. So I have no. These days, I kind of take it all in stride and just sort of say, well, there's one more story for me to add to the bad chapter of Steve's
I guess
screw
you
ups.
can't have, chemistry with everybody. I mean, if any one of us were put into a room with like 100 people, there's no way you're going to like have hit it off with all 100 people. There's going to be, you know, a certain amount that maybe aren't, you know, right off the bat. You're
Yeah, I mean, the great one thing I noticed too, the UK artists are by far the easiest to interview. They are much more. They have a lot more gratitude for their career and a much more humble attitude, and are very much more giving with their time and their stories. I would just say in general than their US counterparts. That's not to say I haven't had a million great interviews with US ones, but the ones where I feel like there were the biggest misfires were, you know, with the US ones. And they didn't all make the book. Obviously, there's only about, well, there's only about 65 or 70 interviews in the book, but I had to make choices towards the end. So Tommy Lee of Motley Crue is not in there, and Russell from Air Supply, that interview is not there, and Mike Score from Flock of Seagulls didn't make it. I just, not that they weren't great stories, but sometimes when I went back and I read the interview, and I'm like, what do I take from this? What did I learn from this? You know, and that didn't seem to stand the test of time as well.
But what made you decide to write the book to begin with?
20 years just seemed like a good time to take stock of what we had done. I get this feeling, and I think I've articulated this a couple of times on the podcast, that when I tell these stories, I feel like I'm downloading them into an MP3 and then uploading them into the podcast universe. And then I think somewhere in that process, I feel like I erase it from my head at the same time. Like, okay, I've told my Duran Duran story. I don't have to, it doesn't have to occupy any megabytes in my brain anymore. Mm-hmm. And so part of it was an attempt to get some of these stories finally, you know, out there on paper, where they'll live forever in a way. And that was no smart part of it. The other part was after 20 years of doing the podcast, I started seeing some through lines in the project, one of which was the sense of community that the podcast has created. All my best friends these days are people from the podcast universe, either people I met as a co-host, like my co-host Brad, or the people I've met on the 80s cruise. And the only reason I've been on the 80s cruise, the main reason is they bring me on board because of the podcast and because I host the trivia. But those are my people now, and we speak a shared language, and our history is formed through the same songs and the same singers, and we quote the same movies. We have the same sensibilities, and once that started becoming really clear to me, which I think was maybe about 5 years ago, I kind of felt like there would come a time when it would be time to put this onto page and paper.
Yeah, and you had quite a few to choose from. So how is it formatted? Do you have like different sections, like different types of interviews, different types of celebrities?
The book is they're sort of grouped by interviews. Every chapter has 3 or 4 interviews, and every interview starts off with the person's name in all caps. So if you're just kind of perusing the book and you're just looking for a specific name, it'll pop out at you. You know, but Terry Nunn, Taylor Dane, Colin Hay. And I did that intentionally so that if you are skimming and you don't want to hear my story from Patti Smythe and how she almost got to be the lead singer of Van Halen, if that doesn't interest you and you want to move on to learning more about Phil Oakey of Human League, just it's real easy to find. But for the most part, the chapters are geared by themes, and there's a whole chapter of, like I said, of interviews that didn't go well. There's chapters where they're much short stories where I just got one real nice piece of information from each artist, and so I put it down like that. All the actors that I've interviewed are grouped together, including the Molly Ringwald. And when you read them, I put the perspective in there around each interview about the circumstances of the interview, why it was, how it was we came to talk to this person, um, any feelings I might have had about the process, or if there's some personal connection I had from when I was 16 years old. Like when I was 16 years old, and I lost my virginity, it was to the Thompson twins, "Hold Me Now." And so when you read the chapter on Tom Bailey, you will learn that. Now, I debated when I was talking to him, do I tell him this? And ultimately I decided no. He was being
just telling the world, isn't it?
I don't mind. I honestly don't mind telling the world. I just didn't want to tell Tom. And I get the impression that his music was very personal to him, and I don't know what he would have said. If I get another chance to talk to him, I might say it. When my co-host Sean Daly, when we talked to Lou Graham, Sean had lost his virginity to was it Electric Blue or Midnight Blue, which is the
Midnight Blue, yeah.
That's what he lost his virginity to, and he told Lou Graham that. And Lou was surprised. But so you make these choices when you're doing these interviews, and the choices I didn't make and that I didn't say, I still tell people about it in the book. I'm like, yeah, I could have told Tom Bailey, I didn't. Sean could have not told Lou Graham, but he did. It's just I think the interviews take on an added context with the additional details that we provide. Like why does Brian Johnson resonate with me? Because the first time I got high was at an AC/DC concert, and I was 14 years old. So I mean, that story is in there. In fact, I even called my mom after the book went to press, and I just said, when you read this, I want you to understand that these things happened 40 some years ago, 50 years ago, and like, you cannot ground me anymore. So
it's hilarious.
As writers, I think a lot of times we have to have those conversations with people.
It was not fun. And I remember she told me, she's like, well, I figured you had tried it at some point. I'm like, yeah, but probably not when you probably didn't imagine I was 14 years old. But
did writing the book change your view like on the work you've done? Like have you gone back and said, oh, I did a way better job than I thought, or it's or a bit cringy, or
the cringy moments are still cringy.
Yeah.
There's an interview with the singer from They Might Be Giants where we ask him some cringy questions, and you could tell he's really annoyed with us.
Oh, geez.
But that we finally managed to get the car back on the tracks, and it all ends in a nice, neat packaging. We're like, we can sleep tonight. I think the takeaway when I wrote these stories, it took me 2 years to write this, is interviews that I thought were failures, that I thought I didn't learn anything from. I learned a lot from. It just took time. Huey Lewis, when we talked to him, he was quite the curmudgeon with us at times, as you might imagine. I mean, Huey Lewis looks like a curmudgeon, and but it was a 9 a.m. phone call, so that didn't help. But Sean and him got into it a little bit of a little testy fight in the middle of the interview, and I put that in the book, line for line, what they said to each other. And it's not that bad. Nobody was cursing or anything, but,
right.
But Sean asked a goofy question, and Huey challenged him on it, and Sean doubled down, and I'm sitting there with my head in my hands going, stop, please. He's gonna hang up on us. And
I guess we're piecing things together because we just did a podcast on Huey Lewis and got to hear someone else's story about meeting him at a con, scaring him. And so he didn't seem to be in that great a mood then either.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know what the world wants from Huey Lewis, except for to sing really well, and we wish his hearing would recover now. But at the time, he was, this was decades after Back to the Future, and he was still making new music, but I mean, we wanted to talk about the old music. And it was clear as I go back and I read the interview, it's clear that he was kind of ready to move on and start talking about other things. And uh, I think I learned a lot about how to interview somebody that day. And I learned a lot of it that day. And then I learned a lot about it in the last 2 years when I read it again. And I understand that Huey was being Huey. He was being true to his brand. He was he was very proud of what he had done, but he was also very, very proud of what he was still doing. And he was acting like any of us would act if challenged on that, even if it was in jest. So yeah, I learned a lot about what it means to connect with somebody and to show them appreciation, and to more than anything to really listen. And just sometimes you just got to put the questions aside and just have a conversation with somebody and let it go where it goes. Those are always the best interviews, always, without a doubt. When I talked to Steve Perry, I had 10 questions for him, and at the end of this, I think I ripped through those in like 5 minutes. And then after that, we just had a conversation for 40 minutes where there was no agenda. It was just two people, talking about time and the present and the future. And it was a wonderful conversation because it wasn't so structured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
those are the best conversations, I think. Yeah.
Going back over the transcripts and such, did you feel the need to kind of edit certain things to like protect people 20 years later, as far as what ages well, what doesn't? I'm just kind of curious on my end if that
Well,
played into your construction of the book.
the only editing we did was just cleaning up the grammar a little bit. So you would take out some of the false starts and the overuse of certain words, like is a word that gets overused a lot. And so I tried to clean it up and take out anything that slowed down the digestion of the thought that they were expressing. But I was lucky in the sense that I don't think anybody ever shared anything that was inappropriate then or inappropriate now. People are pretty still guarded. As open as those conversations became with those artists, they didn't share anything that really shocked me. I mean, I was surprised that Patty Smythe told me the story of being asked to join Van Halen. I didn't know about that ahead of time. I don't think that I knew that John Waite had written Missing You for Nina Blackwood until she told me that story. There was a lot of little things but they knew they were on the record. And when I do an interview, I always tell people if you say something and you decide later on that you'd rather me not use that, I'm happy to take it out. Nobody's ever taken me up on that offer.
Wow.
More often than not, when I'm editing a podcast, I take out stuff that I say that I think, wow, this felt like an interesting thing to say at the time, but now it just sounds like I'm talking to hear my own voice. And so I'll take stuff out. And there have been some personal things in there from time to time that I say that I think a week later, no, that's not staying in there. But no, artists have been really good about that. I mean, sometimes too much so. Like you get someone like Olivia Newton-John, we were so happy to have her, but I knew from our research that she wasn't going to give us anything that we didn't already know. Like she guarded her reputation and her image like nobody else. And so there, as much as we kind of try to get her to share us something new, she wasn't going there. So it was still great to talk to her. And when it's surreal when you hear Sandy from Greece talking to you, Kira from Xanadu talking to you, and but yeah, we as much as we tried to just give us something you haven't said before, she's not going to do it. But other people do, and Deborah Foreman, the actress from Valley Girl, told me about her. She and Nicolas Cage were boyfriend girlfriend or date during the filming of the movie. I had no idea about that, and she told very deep stories about that are in the podcast. It just when I listened to him today, I am just stunned that she shared that much information with me. And good for her though. I mean, I think she felt like she wanted to connect with me because I was going through a rough patch because my girlfriend had just dumped me, and so she wanted to play the part of therapist that day, and I'm glad she did. She and I became friends. We've been friends for years as a result of that.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was one of my favorite episodes. Yeah, yeah.
Everybody
Yeah, she was
loves
so awesome. Yeah.
everybody loves the episodes where something bad happens to Steve.
Are they
Yeah.
all
Well,
still archives going all the way back to the beginning or not?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Are all these podcasts still archived? Like if you buy the book, you can go back and you can actually listen to or watch.
Every episode from
All
1 to
this.
773 are still
Wow.
online.
Wow.
I think Debbie Foreman was episode 79. I used to know off the top of my head because people would always say, "Oh, I love the breakup episode. Sounds like you were going to cry right in the middle of it." I'm like, I was crying right in the middle of it. It wasn't.
well, I think it was more her the way she handled it, the way she was talking to you. She sounded so kind, and it just like it brought her down to earth. That it made her feel more like a real person. So I think that had a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, no, it was. It's a great episode. It's a perfect example of how the podcast was in those early years, where Sean Daly and Kathy Wass were my co-hosts, and that relationship that I had at the time was very public. We talked about it a lot on the show. A lot of times we shared our personal stories on the show. We were very open about our personal lives, and we always have been on the podcast. So when that ended, Kathy and Sean said, you got to acknowledge it. And so we did let's do a breaking up in the 80s show. And then I said, this sounds pathetic. We need something more to it. And we were lucky I sent her a weepy letter, and she called me on the phone an hour later and agreed to do it. So to me, that still remains. I mean, that one and the Steve Perry one remain my two favorites. And I don't see them ever being surpassed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you, who surprised you the most, not just like as a celebrity, but like as a person. And it sounds like Deborah's up there. Is there anybody else that sticks out to you that surprised you that one way or the other?
Dennis DeYoung from Styx was really great. I had heard ahead of time, and I tell this story in the book. I'd heard ahead of time that he can be kind of cranky when you meet him in person. Like if you went to a meet and greet with Styx, that he would be sort of, disconnected. And I was backstage one time at a venue that invited me back a lot I would go on stage and do the on-stage introductions and stuff like that. And it was Night Ranger and Dennis DeYoung, and Dennis was there, and the guy who runs the hall said, do you want to meet Dennis? I'm like, no. He's always been a hero of mine. And if he's a jerk, I really don't, I just don't I don't want to crush my image of him. And he goes, no, he's not a jerk. Trust me. So we go up to him, and he goes, Dennis, this is Steve Spears. He works for the St. Pete Times. Dennis goes, a journalist. You must have some questions for me. And I didn't expect to be talking to him. And I was not prepared to ask any questions. And I blurted out, hey, it was a great show. I loved hearing Castle Walls. I'm just curious, why didn't you play Desert Moon? And the smile on his face disappears. And he looks over at the guy from the hall and says, because this asshole invited Night Ranger to open for me. And I just felt like someone had punched me in the chest. And he goes, I'm just kidding. I just a joke. And he's like, you should have seen your face. Your face is just
funny.
So it was a year or so later that I actually really did a proper interview with Dennis, and I told him that story. He didn't remember it. And I told him that story. And he said, I said that to you. He goes, I am so sorry. I did not mean. I go, no, no, no. It's a great story. I love telling it to people. He's like, I can't apologize enough. That's not me. And I'm like, no, I mean, you have a wicked sense of humor. I now know that. So, and he does. So, but yeah, no, that's still, I can still feel my chest implode with him when I asked that question, his face just dropping. And then this asshole, oh my God, I just felt like I was going to throw up. But it was a great joke. I mean, I love it now. Not so much then.
He is theatrical, so yeah, so
just
it's
he's
probably
just the
not
best.
surprising. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, just those. Anytime you get to meet somebody in person, which doesn't happen too often on the podcast. Normally, you're always on a Zoom call or a phone call. So to meet somebody in person is always a treat.
Do you usually do video now? Not the podcast itself, but when you interview people?
Yes.
Mhm.
We almost always we always do it through Zoom now. Sometimes the artist won't turn the camera on.
Oh,
And
mhm.
they'll ask, they'll say, are you going to use video? And I tell them, no, I'm only going to use audio. I just have the video on so we can see each other. But still, sometimes they won't turn it on. I'll just see a black box and it'll say the person's name. So it's a little disappointing, but I get it. When I was interviewing Terry Nunn one time from Berlin, I could have sworn that, and this was not on video. This is pre-Zoom days. I swear I could hear her chopping carrots in the background. Like she was making dinner while she was talking to me. Or if she wasn't, she was doing something that sounded exactly like that. And whenever I see her now, I imagine her with a phone, like doing this, going, "Yep. What else do you want to know about the US Festival, Steve? Yep."
That's funny. Yeah, but yeah, these people are busy. They're multitasking probably. Yeah.
I'm gonna see her again too in a couple of weeks. She's gonna be on the 80s cruise, and she's one of our. We get VIP guests for our trivia who come up on stage with us, and
Uh-huh.
so I lightly give them a Q&A while we're showing the trivia, and she's one of our guests. And as much as I would like to ask her about the carrots, I'm sure she doesn't remember that interview.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that's if there's anything I wish I could do, I wish I could go back and say, you remember that time we talked? I have this one follow-up question, but I know nobody remembers that stuff. So
Mhm.
I won't torture her. We have her and Taylor Dane and then Alan Frew from Glass Tiger, our three guests this year. A previous year we had Midjur from Ultravox,
Yeah.
and that was surreal. He was telling the story. I found out right before the interview that Dancing with Tears in My Eyes is based on him reading the book or seeing the movie On the Beach, which was a movie from the late 50s and stuff. And it's my dad's favorite. It was my dad's favorite movie growing up, and it meant a lot to him. And we watched it together ourselves a few weeks before he passed away. And so Midge is telling this. So I find this out, and I ask him about that, and he starts telling me, telling the whole audience, there's a few hundred people there about it, and I just start to lose it there, and I'm like, oh great, now I've cried with Debbie Foreman and with Midge and also with John Parr when John Parr played the acoustic version of St. Elmo's Fire to me on a podcast. So yeah, we're starting to add up the Wimpy Steve moments pretty quickly.
Uh, oh yeah, I guess we could talk about we talked about the cruise with Caroline and Claire last week. We can talk about you were there right from the very beginning, right? From the
Yeah,
first cruise. Yeah.
this will be my 10th. This is the 10th cruise. We skipped one year during the pandemic. Everybody did.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot. That first year we had Huey Lewis, Richard Marx, Kool and the Gang. Oh, Jefferson, Starship. It was a really good lineup. Naked Eyes, Wang Chung, I think. I used to have a poster in here somewhere of that. But no, every year is different nowadays. It's just there's up to 17 bands, and every night is a theme night. So it might be the jocks versus the preps, or the punks versus the new wavers, or whatnot. And then every year there's a what they call pop icon night, and it's usually the second to the last night where everybody brings like their A game as far as their costumes go.
Mhm.
And Brad and I are two of the judges for that for the first round. Like we choose the finalists, and then the crowd applause determines the winner. But man, I mean, it's the best night every year because you will see the most creative costumes that are just go beyond what you could possibly imagine. I mean,
Mhm.
some are real straightforward. I mean, one time people came dressed as a 4-pack of Bartles and James wine coolers
Oh, yeah.
with
Mhm.
the carton and everything. One year, there's a woman in a bathtub with bubbles. It was for
Yeah,
Calgon, Take Me Away.
yeah, we just talked about that. That they're friends with Claire and Caroline.
Oh,
Yeah.
are they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a nice story.
there's just so many, and every year there's one that just blows us away. And the thing is to judge that contest and then run and hide, because if there's somebody you didn't pick as a finalist, they're gonna come find you. And so there've been some, you have to be able to withstand that afterwards. Like some of these, there's just a lot of costumes to pick from, and it's really hard every year to do that, to narrow it down. I feel bad, but you're really not. I don't even know what the grand prize is. I think it might be $100, but it is such a great event every year. And like I said, you need a vacation after it to come down from it. Thankfully, it's a Friday to a Friday this year, so I'll have 2 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to kind of recover
Mhm.
afterwards. And but man, it's one of those ones. I know there's other 80s vacations out there, but this one is the first one, and this one is the best one. And I can't recommend it enough. Everyone who's ever gone, it's hard to stop going once you've gone to one.
Mhm.
You just can't. Every year you might say, yeah, this year I kind of want to go to Europe, and then you see the lineup and you see the theme nights. You're like, oh, I really want to see Night Ranger. I really want to see Adam Ant. Oh gosh, is this the year the Human League is on? Oh, I can't. I gotta go see Human League. So
Yeah, something for everyone. Yeah.
and it,
Yeah, that's probably why it keeps growing too, because everybody keeps coming back and then you want to get new people too. So yeah.
yeah,
Accumulates.
they do a great job of mixing. There's rock, new wave, R&B, some hip hop every year. No country, but I mean they have their own crews. But
Okay.
everything else is there, and it's and then all the music that any place you are, whether it's in the spa or the fitness center or the dining room, the overhead music is always 80s music.
Mhm.
They get these incredible tribute bands to come on every year. There's like 3 or 4 of those, and they'll be performing by the pool or doing late night shows. It just you never get tired, but of the live music. I think they say that there's 60 concerts during the week or something like that. It's something
Wow.
ridiculous. You can't
Mm.
see it all. You got to make wise choices.
Mhm. Yeah, could be strategic. So do you do the trivia every year, or was it just a certain number of years that you've done it?
Every year.
Oh, you do.
It was a surprise the first year. Somehow they forgot to tell us until the last minute. And so Brad and I think it was like literally a week beforehand. And the guy who was in charge at the time, who's not there anymore, and he may have told it and it just didn't thought, but I don't remember him saying it, but he said, "You got all your trivia questions, right?" I'm like, "Ooh, what are you talking about?" So we had to write them in a real quick hurry. Nowadays, it takes me about 3 or 4 months to write them all. I start 3 or 4 or 5 months ahead of time. And during the course of the year, I'll send myself ideas, little emails. Oh, let's do something this year where we just focus on sax solos. And so we'll just play you a sax solo from a song, and you've got to name the song. And we'll call the question, I want your sax. And, okay, good.
Hmm.
So now pick 5 of them. And so, yeah, no, every year we do it. It's a couple of years ago we had Sebastian Bach as our guest, and we had been warned ahead of time. Hey, don't mess around. Don't be cutesy with Sebastian. He doesn't really like that. And so we thought, okay, no teasing, no nothing like that. And he came out there, and it was like watching a stand-up comedy routine. He had
Yeah.
everybody in stitches for an hour. He was singing he was singing the final countdown. He sang the theme song to WKRP in Cincinnati. It went on and on. I don't even remember. I don't even know if we got through all the questions we had for trivia that day, because it was just like Sebastian Bach, the stand-up comedian. And it was
rolling with it.
500, 600 people crammed into this room for it. It was hot and steamy, and just the people laughed so hard that they couldn't open their eyes. It was just an incredible once in a lifetime experience. And so you're always, you always got to measure them up to that day. But we've had sing-alongs with Howard Jones, so it's every year is completely different in a way. You just never know. This year we have because Brad and I, our wives aren't coming this year, which means that we don't have to go to prom this year. So we don't have to dress up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were trying to think of what can we do? We don't have to go to prom anymore, because there's every cruise has a prom. And why don't we just host another trivia session? So we're having the first ever after dark trivia session, and all the questions are a little risque, rated R. So it's I'm really I've been playing with those questions for months now, trying to get them the right balance between funny, educational, and naughty. And hopefully I struck the right balance. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most this year is after dark trivia. I'm just curious how many people are going to show up, because it's at 10:30 at night. Mm-hmm. So people are going to be people are already kind of tipsy when they come to trivia at 2 p.m. If we do trivia at 5, people are well on their way to having an amazing evening that they won't remember. At 10:30 at night,
he's gonna be we're
gonna need bouncers.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
oh yeah, that's gonna be a blast. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that. I think Claire and Caroline would probably show up to that, because I don't think they'll have prom dates at that. So so they might go. So.
There's one good question I just came up with earlier today, where it took me a while to find the photos, but you have to identify these movies by the naked man butts that I show you. So there's 3 movies where all you see is, guy naked from behind, and you have to figure out what are these 3 movies. So, and trying to find that's going to probably screw up my Google search history forever.
I was going to ask whose computer you did.
No, I used mine, and I even look when you see where some of the images come in from. I'm like, ooh, that's not a good site to be pulling images off of. but no, I don't want to give it away which the 3 movies are. But I will say that Rob Lowe is one of them, and Patrick Swayze is one of them, and but I don't know that there's more than one choice. There might be Patrick Swayze. You might have a couple choices, but I don't even know that you'll know that it's him, because it's a real tight focused shot on his. I can admit, I was a little uncomfortable. But no, that's gonna be fun. I've been wanting to do that forever, because normally we it's usually more PG-13, but we used to get not threats, but some people still get a little angry that the questions are a little too hard, and I always feel bad about that. We want you to get at least 3/4 of them right. There's like a finely tuned formula where you want to be able to sort of look at any question and say, I know the answer to that, I just can't I can't think who it is, or I know that song, I can't write it down. I want to try to avoid the questions where people are like, I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't even know if that's an 80s movie.
Right.
So every year they get a little easier. Just because I people are having fun, and you have more fun when you get the questions right. So sometimes they're multiple choice, sometimes they're true or false. Or you are on a ship, true or false.
Bingo.
Yeah, like a lot of us, our memories are starting to go anyway. So some of it might sound familiar. You can't quite place it. Yeah,
better at trivia 5 years ago than now, and better now than I will be 5 years from now. So
yeah. Um, yeah, so let's say 20 years from now, somebody finds your show from the first time, but what do you hope that they feel about the 80s?
Oh, you mean if they find the podcast for the first time?
Yeah, yeah.
As long as they don't find the first episode. If I could do anything, I would take those first 40 or 50 episodes and jettison them into outer space so that nobody could hear them ever again. They just don't, they don't stand up, obviously, the test of time. I hope that they would feel the shared memory. I mean, I think that some of the memories of the 80s are just going to last, you know, beyond our time.
Mhm.
And I'd like to think that we hit on those in the podcast. I like to think that we honor a lot of the music that is timeless. We explained well why it's part of our shared memory, why it created a community. You know, why we are nostalgic for this particular decade. I think that's maybe the hardest thing for people to explain about 80s nostalgia who didn't live through it is why we're so stuck in the 80s, why it's important to us this many years later. I mean, in perspective, think of it this way. In the 80s, if we were talking to people who had a podcast about the 1940s, would we possibly understand what it was that they found so special about that decade? I don't know. I'd like to think if you listen to this podcast 100 years from now, you'll understand why we thought the decade was so special, and you'll feel the connection, and you'll want to get to know the people who are sharing these stories. I think we've interviewed a really wide variety of people over the years. Suzanne being one of them, and to be honest, one of the podcast categories that people like the most is when we interview authors. Whenever we have an author on the show, I get a lot more feedback from people because, you know, everyone's heard everything that Donna and Bono has to say about life, but talking to the authors and finding out what inspired them about the 80s to write their books is still very, very interesting to people, and people love discovering new books about the 80s. So I just did a couple author interviews in the last month or two, and there's some scheduled for the next month or two. So as many times as I talk to a Howard Jones or a Tom Bailey or a Thomas Dolby, I love talking to a Suzanne Mataboni, you know, or a Becky Kliss, because I feel it's, you know, we're breaking bread over common ground, and it's always wonderful to hear, you know, how our memories intersect.
It's beautiful. That's perfect.
Mhm. Yeah, I have noticed how you be getting a lot more authors on too. So yeah, that I love that. Especially, you know, it's people our age that are writing about that time and everything. So yeah.
It's true, but
Suzanne,
I think we do have a common thread of feeling like that it was kind of lightning in a bottle in the 80s. It was something that is really hard to explain to people and reproduce. And in writing about it, that's what you're trying to capture. And,
hmm
you know, to get to live in that world for that point where you're writing about it is, even that is special, I think.
writing resets the medium. You know, we live in a world now that's not print centric. Writing is the great equalizer. With Suzanne's book, when I read that, I remember thinking, you know, who am I in this book? What would I have done in this situation? You know, how do I feel about this moment? I put myself as a character in the book, maybe not a character that had a speaking part, but I was a character in your book as I read it.
Wow.
And that's what makes those kind of stories so great. And when authors can build memories like that you can inhabit, you know, and feel like you're part of, that's when the magic happens.
Exactly. Very well said.
Amazing.
Yep. Yeah. So you just feel like you're back there again. So yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why we still decorate our offices. It's the reason why I still have like a circa 1981 boombox behind me. You know, I want. Yeah, it's like the movie Somewhere in Time. You know, where Christopher Reeve has to dress like it's 1918 again and convince himself that he's traveling back in time in order to do it. I think to some degree that the podcast and this office although there's certainly enough modern things around here too. As I sit here staring into my microphone and my
Right.
40-inch monitor, my computer, you just, that ability to take we always call it the podcast time machine. When you can create a podcast time machine or any sort of time machine, you go back to that time and you feel like you can smell the pizza at the roller rink, or you can, the echo in a mall, where you're standing on top of the escalator and you can see the gap and on one side and things remembered on the other. And there's that skeezy McDonald's that you worked at for 6 months one year. And, anytime you can recreate that moment, it's just special. And books, I just think, are such a great medium to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
the kind of the iconography that is used on the cover that I'm looking at here on Amazon is somewhat similar to what you've got behind you in Paul. I think what you were saying before about us all being a community and all kind of communicating through these same memories and images and song lyrics and sounds. I think it just goes to show that we all kind of have the same things ingrained in our brains as far as what the 80s looked like and felt like and sounded like. And, to me, that's a really cool thing that.
Yeah, I had to pull up the book so I could see what you were talking about.
Yeah, we're matching. Yeah.
Yeah. That is crazy. It's like you've taken my book and you turned it into your background.
Yeah. My daughter had said to me when I asked her about, I switched to a new cover. And it really doesn't have a lot on it. It's sunglasses. And she had said to me, well, no, the color scheme is 80s. People will know it's 80s by the color scheme. And I think that's all you need to plug into just that kind of vibe of the decade, is like a few visual cues or musical, cues that you hear. And we're all right on it.
Yeah. If you look at the cover too, I didn't notice it the first. I didn't design this cover. I had a book designer named Tammy Deaver who did it, and she's fantastic with TLC Book Designs. And she and I worked hand in hand on this project, and she designed the interior and the cover. I didn't notice the first time she sent it to me that, but every one of these little cassettes that are scattered around have names on them of the people that I interviewed.
Look at that.
And I did not notice that when I didn't notice that. I was like, oh, that's cool, all these cassettes. And she's like, did you see the names on them? And I'm like, oh, wow. So, and then cool. Theoretically, that's me. That is a silhouette of my head, is how I looked in the 80s.
Oh.
So we had to. That was Tom Cruise.
Well, there's a little bit of a faint mustache. I mean, I had a mustache back then, and you can sort of like, I can see it here, but nobody else can. As long as I can see it. So.
You want to tell people where they can find your book?
Yeah, if you go to it's right now, it's available. The pre-sale is available on Amazon for the ebook version. That's crazy way that Amazon works. You can have a pre-sale for the ebook, not for the paperback book. So the paperback book goes on sale March 11th on Amazon. There's a page on our official website. If you just go to Amazon, search for Stuck in the 80s, you'll find it. There's if you go to the sit80s.com, which is our official website for Stuck in the 80s, there's a page called, podcast book, and you'll see more links there. So it'll be on Amazon at first, and then it'll be on Barnes and Noble and Target, Walmart, all those other online retailers, and then hopefully in a number of regular independent booksellers, depending on where you live. So really hoping that, some of them pick it up and give it a try, because I think it's just a nice little way of remembering a really special time, and it celebrates the community behind it. And I don't think I myself knew how it was going to end until I was writing the very end of it. And it got a little weepy for me. But when you're trying to put a bow on something that you've been doing for 20 years, it can get a little emotional when you sort of realize that, things just don't happen on a timetable that you can dream up in your head. Things happen on their own pace. And And this book happened at its own pace. But I'm glad it's ready for the cruise. I'm glad it's ready to come out, and I hope people enjoy it.
Yep. I had already pre-ordered mine.
Excellent. It debuted at #1 on new releases for music history.
Oh,
So
really?
that was kind of interesting, I thought. But no, it's
Thanks. Excellent.
some people keep asking if there's going to be an audio version. There's no way I can read this book without crying. So that's not going to happen. And it's based on 733 podcast episodes. So, I mean, they're all there. If you want to hear the full unabridged version, they're there. Maybe not with all the context, but we'll see if it becomes popular enough, maybe we can find a way to do an audio version.
Yeah. Have Daly do it.
Have him voice his. I need special microphones when Sean Daly records, because
he's going to do all the celebrity voices, and they're already recorded because they're actually podcasts. So it's kind of
it would be. Imagine trying to piece that together.
Yeah,
it would be a. I love audiobooks. I really do. That's how I love to consume books that way. But I don't know that this one can do that. So.
Yeah. And would you have to get then releases from all the people that you interviewed, even though they're all?
I don't know.
Already on? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think we're ever going to need to find out. I'm happy with it being in print, and I'm happy that I could finally give a copy to my mom, and she can finally explain to people what it is that I do for a living.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a full-time author, but she's never been able to explain what my job is to anybody. So now she could say my son, the author. And so that means a lot to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And right. Yeah. You wouldn't really need an audio version. You got all those, 20 years worth of audio people can listen to. And that's an extended edition. Yeah.
Yeah. If I could, if I really had the time, I would go through and pull highlights from all the interviews that are in the book, and then somehow embed them into the ebook edition so that you could listen to Deborah Foreman as I'm starting to break down and she's trying to pull me back together, or you can listen to Kenny Loggins sing to us, or stuff like that. You can cringe when Andrew Dice Clay doesn't give me 2 inches in our interview. So.
All right. And then and of course you can find Stuck in the 80s on all podcast platforms, right?
Yep, it's everywhere now, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, 733 our Martha Quinn episode just went online today.
I just saw that. That's awesome. Yeah. Because you had her on before, right? And now
this will be the 4th time she's been on, but the first time in about 10 years. And the first time we ever did it on a video where we could see each other. So,
awesome.
That was special.
Yeah, she's great.
Episode 672.
Oh, is that so you're on 672? Wow, okay. That wasn't that long ago then. What year was that? 2024?
2023.
Oh, okay.
July.
Yeah, I remember that was good. I really do. You really did a great job. I love how all your chapter titles were named after 80s songs, right?
Yes, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I actually created a Spotify playlist with all her songs. Yeah.
Oh, really? You gotta send me a link. That'd be a good playlist.
Yeah.
And I forget what the next author interview is. I think it's a girl who was a drug and alcohol addict in the 80s and how somehow used her 80s heroes as a way of climbing out of that hole. So it'd be interested. I'm still reading the book, interested to see how that ends. But I love reading books like these that are set in the 80s. And even though my book's not chronological, I think it's thematically ordered. And hopefully it I hope people get an appreciation for the passion that we put into it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yep. And of course, like I said, I've been listening for most of those 20 years. So I can't, obviously, I highly recommend the podcast. Yeah, for sure. Well, Suzanne, you want to tell people how they can find you?
Yeah, I'm at SuzanneMattaboni.com. And the novel that I wrote that took place in the 80s, which deals with some subjects of that day, is Once in a Lifetime. So you can look for onceinaLifetimeNovel.com for some specifics on that. And you can find me pretty easily on Facebook and Twitter, maybe TikTok now and then, or Instagram if I'm feeling more visual. But in any case, yeah, pretty easy to find me.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve, for doing this. It's been so nice meeting you after
Thank
all
you.
these years. And yeah, have a blast on the cruise. Can't wait to hear about that.
It'll be fun. There'll be some tales to tell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well,
The
thank
next
everybody.
podcast.
Hmm. And thank you everybody for watching and listening. And then